This week, we have some announcements from IDW Games and a new digital version of Catan.
Then we've got our topic of the week, licensed games. Games based on movies, TV shows, video games, and other properties. What works and what doesn't. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this is the Roll for Crit podcast. So, first off, we have a lot of interesting news from IDW Games from a panel they had at Comic-Con. For those who don't know, IDW Games also does comics, so a lot of these are their own licensed products. Now, to start us off, we'll go with Kill Shakespeare. This is a new game that is semi-cooperative, based on the comic Kill Shakespeare, and is said to come out around August. But if we know anything about releasing things, it will be a while. We also have reprints of some of their games, Tammany Hall and Yedo. I apologize if I mispronounced those terribly. Also, an X-Files game based on the first 3 seasons with expansions included. So, if you're an X-Files fan, get excited. We also have other games that aren't their properties that are from Japan. Machi Koro and Dime Monsters. Both of these are actually apparently similar to some of the games we already know, Catan for the first one and Love Letter for the second. So, very excited to see all these games come out.
So am I.
Mm-hmm. You actually like X-Files.
Well, you don't like X-Files?
Well, I mean, you've actually watched more than me.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm super excited for that one, which sounds like a really fun game. And I love, supposedly it's like each play session is kind of like an episode. So you actually play through the plot of an episode.
So you never really find out the end?
Right. Eventually they'll release the movie, but it won't be that good. But so I'm super excited for that. And I haven't read Kill Shakespeare, but I know they're doing we already talked about some Chew games, so that could be interesting. But anyway, yeah. I think they're doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, and there's plenty more, so go onto our site to see the full list.
They didn't make, but Lock and Key, I think, is also a comic that we enjoy.
And if you haven't read it, both of us would highly suggest going and finding it. It's definitely a good read.
Absolutely. In non-news related news, just kidding, it's news, there is a new digital version of Settlers of Catan, which was released this past week, coming out from Microsoft. So this is a partnership between Mayfair Games and Microsoft. And what's kind of cool about this game is that it's all HTML5. So it's meant to be played sort of in Internet Explorer, but it's compatible with whatever, Facebook or your phone or anything. And so it's all run in HTML in the browser, and it's basically a stripped down version of Catan that you can play with people online. It's free. It's free, by the way. You can do a preview of it, so you can take like your first turn, which I did.
So wait, the preview is free or the entire
The whole
game?
thing is free, but you have to sign up. You have to like make a name or whatever, or link it to your Facebook or something. But I found it a little pointless. I thought it was kind of weird. When I said stripped down, like the graphics and interface of it are not very appealing. And like one of the things they did to simplify it is you don't roll dice. It just tells you it's your turn and here's your number, which I feel like is sort of missing the point of part of what's fun about Catan. And you can like play, like I said, multiplayer, and it's asynchronous, so it'll tell you, someone took their turn and stuff, which is cool. But for the most part, I thought it's just kind of weird. It seems more to me like an experiment in HTML5 than an actual game that anyone would really want to play. Certainly not over the physical version of Catan. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will be a big hit. I don't know.
Well, once again, it's great for people who, don't have anyone around, whether they actually don't have friends or whether they live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's, like, I understand why the dice rolling, it's always fun to have that even if it's digital, but it does help a lot with the streamlining it and stuff.
True, but I mean, I'm just a button that's like you press that says roll. I don't know. I feel like they're losing the spirit of the game. I feel like it's like a committee got together in a boardroom and made a list of bullet points of making the game without actually looking at they looked at the function rather than the form.
Yeah, I mean,
sense.
yeah, no, I understand what you mean.
What do you think's better, the PS3 version or the PC version?
I'd have to go PS3 on that one.
Well, I'd say board beats all of them by a lot, though.
Sure. But also, I feel like of all the board games that I want to, like, there are some games that I think are really cool to play, like that, like, stupid example, but Scrabble or Words with Friends is, you know, it makes sense to, like, oh, I played a move and then I'll wait a couple days with my friend. I feel like Catan, it's more of an immediate thing. I don't.
Well, I feel because you're also asking people for trades, it's not something that you put away and wait for your turn. Like there are,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a game where actually any of the Arkham series, usually you take your turns and then you can be like, oh,
Right.
the Mythos card came out, oh shit.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
That's why you can just be in the middle of a train ride and just start crying and everyone's wondering what the hell happened to them, not knowing that you just got devoured.
Well, regardless, it's available now. You can find it in the links below. Catan anytime. Check it out. Try it out. It's free.
Speaking of games, which we do all the time, Zombies is being re-released for a 3rd edition. And of course, they're rewarding those who get it by actually making it different than the other ones. It'll come with new figures, new rules, and new forms of play, including co-op modes in which everyone has to live to get to a helicopter pad. And other different co-op modes, like maybe like others have to get the helicopter pad, but they don't have to live. And it adds a lot more stuff, so that you actually get, you know, it's not just the same thing, just print. It just says 3rd edition on it. You're actually getting a full new game in essence, which is really awesome.
And what do you think of, like, it's kind of weird to me that they have a 3rd edition, right? I mean, I know a lot of games go through new iterations, but this is a fairly popular one. I wonder I don't know, I feel like it kind of says something bad about the original game that they had to fix it twice.
Well,
in essence.
I think usually with board games, from what I've seen, usually editions aren't as much about fixing. I mean, sure, they fix small things in there, but I think it's obvious just that it's the next printing cycle.
True. Like, we got to print a new one, we might as well make some changes to it.
Yeah, like it's less about being forced to do changes. Like, this isn't changes as much as they're adding things, apparently. Like, they didn't change rules. They added like just 5 new rules and some more miniatures and stuff.
And I've played Zombies like twice. Have you?
No, I've not. I've yet to have it.
It's like, it's all right. it's a light tile laying kind of game where you play Zombies. I like the idea of a co-op mode. So, you know, it's cool that they're doing stuff. And supposedly, I think this is also, it will work with all the other expansions because there's like 40 of them.
I mean, I assume that they would do that.
So.
Yeah, this is the one, like, what was the last? I think we have up to 13 or 14.
Oh, at least. I mean, it goes to 12, but then there's like a couple points.
There's like 666. I think there's like a 3-point something that you create your own.
Yeah. So
and
there's
a new one's coming out soon, wasn't there?
Probably.
Come
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's probably one like every other month.
Yeah,
I
of
just
course.
assume. Final story of today. Another board games in the mainstream news story. If anybody out there listens to This American Life, they had an episode recently which featured heavily the game Diplomacy. So this is a game somewhat notorious and among ourselves now, though we have yet to play it. And they interviewed a guy who recounted his history being an experienced diplomacy player and participating in tournaments and going to people's homes to play, and how, if you don't know, Diplomacy is a game where each player is a country. There's 7 players, and you're trying to take over the world, essentially, through
Cunning, strategy, pacts, treaties,
there's an air leak over
backstabbing.
there. Yes, it involves negotiation tactics. So you actually make deals with people, and you can go behind people's backs and turn on them.
Literally, you go into other rooms and talk.
Right. And this guy was talking about how it got so bad at one point, one of the things that he did was one of his opponents, he edited their face onto a pornographic image and basically blackmailed them into siding with him. So this game can get intense.
All right, note to self, Jonathan's head on
Don't worry,
lizard body.
I have all of them already pre-made for anyone I might play with, just as a coincidence, but it will work for the game.
You just happen to have them in advance.
But, so it was a really interesting story. I recommend that you listen to it, even if you're not interested in board games, why are you 15 minutes into this show and listening to this? It's weird. But We gotta get a playthrough of it at some point.
Oh yeah, and part of me is excited. Well, this excitement got me even more scared. I recently picked up off the Steam sale Civ 5.
Right.
And I've been finally getting a chance to play that. And it has the same idea in which there's other countries. I mean, it's not the same thing, obviously, but still dealing with them, with the bots.
It's hard enough dealing with robots.
Yeah, and now I can just imagine dealing with you and knowing that, like, unlike the computer, because if you make a pact, you're forced to keep it. You could literally back out of that the last second.
No, it's terrifying, and like listening to the story talking about how people will go so far out of the way to convince others, like, no, man, I'm gonna stick with you. Don't worry, you and me, and this is our plan. And then they go tell the same thing to someone else and just totally.
That reminds me. How in the hell do you do a tournament? Isn't this like a multiple hour game?
I'm pretty sure they. Well, I don't know. It might just be one game, but they might have like multiple days, and they have people who are like graduate through the ranks and stuff.
I cannot imagine going to a tournament.
I don't know how it works. I think for some people this is like their D&D or something, where like this is their game that they play.
Now, can you imagine us who've never played before, and then one person like that in a group?
I can't even imagine just us. It's like, it's horrible. We're mean we're in flux. We shout at each other.
We say we're mean, but like we said before, then we read how other people games are like, why would you do that?
We're not the worst of the worst, but we try.
We need that step of our hate game.
We really do. I think that's all the news we've got, which is going to take us over into
Kickstarter territory.
It sure is. And we got a Kickstarter for us.
Oh, I do. My Kickstarter is Clockwork Wars. This is from Eagle Games. They've made many other games before. It's already funded and still has 30 days to go. Oh, when we last look. And it was almost 2 times its initial goal, which is pretty awesome. And they've already hit a bunch of their stretch goals, a lot of the ones we've talked about, which are good about upgrading the quality of the game, which I really like. And the game itself is pretty much hexagonal territory control with victory points, and you each play as different species. There's like humans, there's troglodytes, which are pretty much ape people, so Planet of the Apes, awesome idea.
Huh.
There's also the dog, and I forget the last tribe.
The dog?
Like they're like dog humans.
Okay.
So I forget what they're called.
Dog humans?
Yeah, like like a mixture. So they're like
talking about my mother-in-law,
dogs.
I think.
But also you get the game at the $85 mark, like the reward, which comes also with a poster and the art book.
That's the minimum to get the game?
To get the game itself, yeah.
Oh, it's pretty expensive.
Well, it is.
Big...
But for $30 more, you get the next expansion as well, which is pretty nice, which comes with another species and a whole bunch of other stuff. And the artwork looks amazing, and the board looks really cool. So I definitely think it's something you should take a look at. And
yeah, when I glanced at it, just the concept is really cool.
I should say,
yes,
I forgot,
please do.
there will also be there's generals and like monsters and stuff, including one that's a Leviathan, so you get this giant Leviathan figure, apparently just eats armies or something, so...
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Is a Leviathan a specific thing, or
I think it's
like general?
Well, I think it's called the Leviathan.
Okay, I'll take it. Mine is for if you're on a budget.
The exact opposite of mine.
So I can tell you, every week there's more and more Kickstarters that I like. There were 3 that I could have talked about today. The one that I'm going with is called 101, and it is published by Grail Games, and basically it's it's a card game based somewhat in computer programming, hence 101.
Really?
It's about binary code.
Of course.
So it's a 2-player game, head-to-head, 10 or 15 minute game. One player is the ones, one player is the zeros. And there are 5 rows of cards they're labeled 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. And whoever has the most of their cards, zeros or ones, in a row at the end of the game wins that many points, if I'm being clear. So each turn you get to play one card in one of the rows. But what makes it interesting is there's some different effects that you have. Like it might have an if-then on the side. So it'll say if 1, then 0 on a 0 card. So if you place that 0 next to the other player's 1, it turns their 1 into a 0. Now you get another card in that row for free. So there are a lot of these little like head games of, if I put one here, they can do this, but if they have that card, they're going to go there, that kind of thing. It sounded like a really cool concept. It's really interesting. It's like $15 to back it, and it just looks like a neat little game. Also, I wanted to mention, last week we talked about the Resistance Kickstarter. I wanted to say that they had an update. We were talking about last week how I have the first edition of Resistance, and I wasn't sure if this would be compatible and that kind of thing. Well, they announced that they are now going to be including cards in the game to make it compatible with any edition of Resistance, including Avalon.
Awesome.
So you can now combine or mix and match all the sets.
Oh God.
So I thought that was good news for me. So.
But going back to the game.
Go talk to 101.
I feel like this would be a great game if you do know binary. You play it, and then at the end you actually translate what your lines say. Like,
it probably wouldn't say anything.
You will feast your soul upon me. I am the internet's god.
there's like 5 or 6 cards maybe per row. It would probably just be like
What if we put it in a mirror?
Oh, then it would say Futurama reference. That's it.
Yeah, I think that is.
It is it.
Does that mean it's time?
It's time.
Oh, it's time. It is time for our topic of the week.
Welcome back to our topic of the week section. You were just here about 5 seconds ago, and so are we. This week we're talking about licensed games. Any game, of course, based on an existing property. So why don't we just jump right in and talk about some of our favorite licensed board games, because it's a tricky territory to navigate, I think, in board games, as well as in anything, really. I think traditionally, especially video games, but even movies, anytime you're adapting one property from its native medium to a new one, I think there's a risk and potential dangers there. So maybe, what are some of the ones that we think have worked really well? Actually, surprisingly, several of board games that I think are some of the best board games have come from licensed properties. Of course, ones we've mentioned many times in the show: Battlestar Galactica, Marvel Legendary.
I love that game too.
Firefly is a great one that just came out recently. But Battlestar, I think, is a perfect example for me, because it does, first of all, it's a good game. That's important. It can't be a rush job. But I think what makes that game so special for me, especially as a fan of the show, is how well it captures the feeling of the show and the atmosphere of being in the show. And I think that's when that's how you make a licensed game really special, is when you have people designing it who really understand that mindset and what makes the show special and how to carry that over into a game. You would agree, I'm assuming, on Battlestar?
Yeah, well, I think...
Have you watched Battlestar? No, right?
No, but I mean, I understand.
But you know the game.
And, well, Firefly, I think, does a good job at it, too. And to bring an opposite example, the Lock and Key game.
Good opposite example.
As we mentioned earlier.
Which we just talked about.
There is a Lock and Key game. And while it's fun, because you get to see candles and stuff, it doesn't really capture the idea, at least in my opinion, the Lock and Key, the horror and also the mystery. It's more like just the Yahtzee, score points, that's it.
No, and I think, not to throw anybody under the bus or anything, but Cryptozoic is a game company that I think dabbles quite a bit in what I would say is pasting on a theme to get money.
Well, they do have quite a bit of
a good majority of licensed games go to them. They're very good in negotiating those deals, because apparently they make the games and they sell, so companies keep coming to them. But like you said, Lock and Key, this kind of goes back to our discussion of theme, which is obviously what these games are kind of all about. You could replace the Lock and Key with anything, and it would be the same game. There's nothing special about it. I mean, you get keys, but it could be just a special card. It doesn't mean anything really. Other games. Actually, one that is a little different that still works, I think, is BioShock Infinite, which is not really a translation of the game. It takes a larger scale view of it. Of the game, of the video game, I mean.
It does, because it's not as much it's capturing the game itself, like the BioShock game, first-person shooter, but it's capturing the spirit of the world, the chaos, the the two factions fighting each other with units and trying to gain control of territory.
Right.
And this one wild card running around with Elizabeth.
Right.
It still has that.
No, yeah, but I think so. I think it's a good you don't necessarily need to take just the show or the property at face value. Like if you can find an angle, an aspect of that property and make it more interesting, I think that's a perfect example of how you could do that. Because if someone said they're making a BioShock Infinite board game before that, you probably would have assumed that it would be
you play as Booker or something.
Right, and you're doing blah 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 blah, which is with a big. I think it's on the back of the box for BioShock Infinite. From Ken Levine, you're doing blah 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 blah.
You really like those B words.
No, I do.
Like that, and earlier you're like ba 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 ba.
Oh right, yeah. Those B words.
Yeah, those B words.
Yeah,
no.
I like those B words.
The ones you don't have to bleep out.
I know there's some others that we can think of, license games that we enjoy. A lot of them, of course, are like nerdy properties.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the Adventure Time game, which we've said is okay.
Well, that one, it's sort of interesting about that one because they tried to capture, which is something that's coming up more recently. They're trying to capture a game within the property. So it's not really about the property.
Right.
They tried to capture Card Wars, which if you don't know, in the show Adventure Time, Jake challenges Finn to a game called Card Wars. And I don't think they did a successful job at it, personally, but that's just me. I think another thing we should mention with licensed games, because I sort of feel it's a whole different boat, is things like HeroClix, the DC deck building, I think falls under this, because it's not really much about just capturing the spirit like we're talking about, but it's really getting as many properties like the What If Superman and Goku with Pacific Rim and Terminator, we're all fighting.
Right. Yeah, and like the whole, basically all the Cryptozoic deck building engine games.
Yeah, the Cerberus engine.
Yeah, Cerberus.
I always mix it up because the Marvel deck building has like almost a Chimera engine, is it?
I think it's maybe it's the
other way around. Yeah, we mix the two up. But
pick better names, but
yeah, they picked good names. They just picked the same.
Because they have Lord of the Rings and Street Fighter and all these things you can.
It should be noted, Lord of the Rings is actually not meant to mix.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, they actually have different backs and everything, and the rules are a little different. They actually made, which is sort of cool. If you play the Lord of the Rings one, it's actually designed so you actually fight the villains in the order they see them. So you're actually traveling the way they did.
Huh.
Unlike, DC one is literally like, oh, look, it happens to be Lex Luthor this time.
That's another one, the Lord of the Rings card game. Did I play that with you? Or no?
No.
I don't think you were there, but...
I played the Lord of the Rings.
The board game, I mean.
Oh, the board game, no.
It's like, I forget, Fantasy Flight has it now, but that's a kind of that's a pretty good one that does a good job of capturing the spirit of the books or movies. It's a little outdated now.
There is one neither of us have played as far as I know, the Game of Thrones board game, which apparently is very good.
That's right, which I've been eager to play.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things about and heard which families to never play as.
Right, and attempting to another one with a lot of negotiation and backstabbing and.
But that
intrigue.
makes sense because that's exactly what the show is about.
Right, which is perfect.
And there's also, what about would you say like Lovecraft? Would you say?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because you don't think of it as being a license, but it really is.
It is. It's just that it falls under the free copyright.
Right, public domain.
Public domain, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, everybody's kind of dipped their toes into that.
Well, it's almost just like as Smash Up. It's the obligatory Cthulhu set. Every game needs a Cthulhu.
And another, we haven't played any of the Sherlock Holmes games. There's a couple out there, but that would be.
We should get the one that mixes the two.
Is there one?
Yeah, Studying Emerald. It's actually about apparently the other one's already awoke and have control of the world, but you play a Sherlock or something, and you're fighting the forces of evil and stuff.
All right. So back to HeroClix. That's something. I feel like I haven't played it. We haven't played it, but I think that's definitely a little bit more of a. Like you said, you just want to get all the properties in together because you're mixing and matching from so many universes. Again, I think you run the risk of kind of diluting it a little bit. But I think
it bypasses the feeling by just being able to be like, I'm so cool. I have an alien and predator along with a Power Ranger on my team. Like you bypass it just by having the things.
And so many people.
Which
are
is why
that.
I think the DC deck building game works. Even though I think we both agree Marvel does a much better job catching the heroes and villain, I should say now. Theme more. Mm-hmm. But like just being able to have the superheroes, since there's so many, which this works very well with the superhero world because there's so many heroes and villains. Like, and be able to mix them with other things. I think that works really well.
It's more about just the enjoyment of seeing it. Like, it adds flavor to the game rather than being the flavor of the game.
What about, would you say, I would say that we have to bring up games that sort of became the license. Like Dungeons & Dragons, Magic the Gathering, like, they didn't base their things on something, but now they're so big, like, there are movies being made on them.
Or even Munchkin now. It's like all these different Munchkin games. Yeah, that's a weird one to me a little bit. Well, sometimes because there's what is it, like Neverwinter Nights, the video games were like based on Dungeons and Dragons, and so sometimes it goes the other way around. Or now we're also upcoming getting the Witcher board game based on the video game, but that's sort of off topic. But yeah, it's a little weird sometimes. Like, I feel like they're, like with Munchkin in particular, I think they're going a little overboard. But like, if you can make a good game out of it, and especially for things like Dungeons and Dragons, and you said that's just such a huge. There's so much there.
Yeah, I think that's why I think Dungeons, Dragons, and Magic are probably one of the few games Munchkin has, but I think those two are going to be the ones that really succeed at doing this, going the reverse way, because both of them have such huge stories. Like Dungeons & Dragons, literally, they can do almost whatever they want.
Right.
And as with Magic the Gathering, there's so many different planes and planeswalkers. You could write your own story that somehow mixes back in with the game or something. So like it works. Both of them work really well in terms of expanding their properties, and they know it.
And it works. Games or not games. Properties that have not been turned into board games that you think should be, or maybe that should be done better. We already said Lock and Key.
Well, I think one property, we've talked about this one a lot.
Okay.
It'd be really awesome. I'm not 100% sure how they do it, but sort of an alien board game that somehow, like, the alien actually tracks his own movements on a board. Sort of like the.
I don't want to say it because I want to make that game.
But what's the
Alien.
the other
board games.
There's an actual board game. It's the one with the Jack the Ripper game, where the Jack Ripper actually tracks his own movements.
From Whitechapel.
Yes. The Jack Ripper has his own little board, hides it away, and he actually tracks his movements. I think it would be awesome if there's an alien game like that,
Oh, another one, sort of along the same lines, is The Thing.
Oh, well, yeah.
There's a scenario, in the game Betrayal at House on the Hill, there's a scenario very similar to The Thing that I thought was very fun. And any game with like hidden roles like that, potentially very cool.
One of the things that would be why that's so great is it sort of adds multiple hidden roles when, like Battlestar, which you mentioned, that change midway through the game. You're not bad from the beginning.
Right.
So it's like
this adds another wrinkle.
Yes.
Two big ones that I think are one, Harry Potter. Of course, there have been some.
They've been card games.
Licensed Harry Potter games.
But like they're usually, Mattel. We've rushed it out as quick as possible.
I want like the Fantasy Flight, like the big deal, like hundreds of cards and components. Harry Potter, like Hogwarts.
So you
Battle.
want all these to be American version of the game,
pretty much. Well, yeah. Well, I think pretty much. I mean, even The Witcher is going to be technically a European designer, but he uses like Robinson Crusoe. I think so many games, especially if you're adapting a property like a TV show or a movie, you have to make it more thematic. So it basically becomes that American style game in the process. But the other one that is technically already has some games that are very well made and successful is Star Wars. But again, they're all like, there's the ship battle game and there's an LCG, but they don't have that, like I said, again, big.
He wants a big board.
Standalone, like where I'm Luke and you're Han and one player is Darth Vader or whatever it is, and you're playing game and there's expansions. So this, you know what I mean? Like that.
I guess.
I want that full experience rather than, right now they have like little based off spin-offs of Star Wars almost.
I guess one thing I sort of want, really, to be fair, though, I feel like they'd be what I want would be almost identical to the Firefly game, would be like Cowboy Bebop and like Outlaw Star.
Are there any anime-based board besides?
most of the ones I know are usually the ones rushed. Like we've seen all of them, or they're like Cryptozoic has the Shonen Jump ones.
Right.
Really, we don't see some of the other ones, and I really think that would be really cool because they in essence it's the same idea. It's exploring, it's finding out your own things, and I think that would be really awesome. Maybe if they were expansions for it, which will never happen.
Yeah.
But
Dragon Ball Z board game or something would be cool, or like I don't know, One Piece or.
There are plenty of properties, from Japan. We just need, have a good developer, not,
It'll happen.
Someone who wants
sure.
a quick buck. That's always my fear. Actually, that's usually my fear anytime I see anything anime related. It's usually like, I have a feeling this was done in like a second. So like it actually turns me off a little bit because I'm too afraid it's just...
You've been burned too many times before.
It's not even burned 2 times. I've just heard too many times.
Maybe a Transformers board game?
That's true. I just... I don't even know what I'd want for... Like, how would it work?
I know, it'd have to involve building or something.
That would be cool if somehow you could like take your miniature and just like flip it up
like
or
something. Like a Lego
something.
game or something. Anyway, maybe a Lego game or something.
But yeah, like even though we've mentioned a lot of properties, there are plenty more that we would love to see.
Absolutely.
What would you want to see?
Not you,
Ivan. Well, no, we'll hear from you later. But
unless there's someone out there watching also named Ivan, then you, Ivan.
But we'd love to hear what you want, and maybe what would you want to see from it? Like, would you want maybe somehow the backstabbing, or would you want an actual board? Do you want a card game?
Do you want a worker placement based on Sesame Street?
Would you want a roll for crit board game?
Not hearing any yeses.
Just give them a minute.
What can they do? How can they let us know?
Oh, well, they can comment on this video for one thing.
Okay.
But they can also send us an email.
Oh, yeah. What's our email address?
Oh, that would be at rollforcrit@gmail.com.
No at.
No, I jumped ahead to Twitter.
You got excited. You can also let us know on Twitter at rollforcrit or at our individual Twitter accounts at Quentz.
At Dorokiryu.
And at Ivan R. Hahn, our producer man. Of course, if you want to find lots of Great Lays licensed games that we have on our site and all the news stories that we covered this week, you can go to our website. It's rollforcrit.com. That'll do it.
That sounds like it.
Thanks for watching. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this is the Roll for Crit podcast.